So much for everyone for joining me. I have been so impressed this week. I've been busy in schools and districts all week, and I just give you all huge props for continuing to keep going on, even though we're a week out from Christmas break. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. We have a full couple of hours, as always, for our fourth attendance day. And at the end, we do have a second series set up. So at the end of the presentation today, I will give you some save the dates for those presentations. We don't have registration information yet, but all of you will receive an email with that information in it. It will also be available in our e-brief. And the first session starts toward the end of January. So same format as these, online in the morning. And actually, we're going to be offering them in the morning and in the afternoon and putting the recordings up. So excited about that we have that arranged. Here is the Padlet of resources. And as always, we just keep adding to that. The PowerPoint for today is on that Padlet. So if you want to pull that up, download it so that you can see it, that is your choice, or you can have it available if you need to use it to present at a future date for your staff. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, everybody see, oops, the PowerPoint presentation. Awesome, thank you. All right, so we are in session 4. Hang on, I also have to hit record. More caffeine, more caffeine. Nicole, you have it. Are you able to see it quick to hit record for me, please? Or did it disappear?
It shows it's recording already.
It says it is. I thought I stopped.
Oh, now it's not. Oh, now it is. Yeah.
Yep, it's recording, Tammy.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. All right. I think we have all the technological, hopefully, glitches out of the way. But so we are in session 4. We are going to be talking about Tier 3 strategies. These are for our kiddos that have missed a lot of school. We also have Ryan Eldridge here today. He is going to do a quick presentation for us regarding an attendance plan, that format that Washington Local has adopted, and he has graciously offered to share with us. So I really appreciate that. As you know, my name is Tammy Cruz. I work at the state support team. My colleagues Nicole, Cindy, and Ralph are also on this presentation. So we are available here to help you with lots of needs, and attendance included. If you haven't already, please put your name and school and position in the chat so that we can use that for attendance purposes. The link I put to the Padlet is in the chat. It can also be accessed through this QR code. Same link as we've been using for the other 3 sessions. And same learning intentions. We want to make sure that we're using data to address chronic absenteeism. It's been identified as an issue in Ohio. It's an issue in a lot of our schools. Many of you received the invitation to join this series because of chronic absenteeism at a certain threshold. So we want to make sure that we're using data, we're looking at the data, but then we're also using these strategies, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, in order to help address and help meet the needs of the kiddos to get them to school, and the families to get their kiddos to school, so that they are there to learn all of the awesome academics that you are presenting to them. We are in our last session for this part of the series. So Tier 3 has a lot to do with wraparound services. Okay, these are case by case, individuals that we're looking at to say, okay, what is really going on with this kiddo and why are they missing so much school? But to start, before we jump into interventions, House Bill 410, which was revised and is now part of House Bill 33. Huge props to Debbie Nagel, who's the literacy specialist. She's like, House Bill 33, that's the literacy bill. Yep, it's all in there. It's a gigantic bill. So House Bill 410 was updated when House Bill 33 came out. And it was put into effect October 3rd of 2023. And it has created some confusion as far as what it means for chronic absenteeism in schools. So we are going to do some myth busters as far as what is true and what is a myth about House Bill 410. So I'm going to ask that you either turn on your camera and give me a thumbs up if it's a fact or a thumbs down if it's a myth, or you can use the reaction buttons in Zoom, or you can put it in the chat. We will UDL this a little bit so that you have multiple means of expression. So first, myth or fact, all right? I'm looking for answers in the chat. Chronic absenteeism is the same as truancy. So thumbs up, thumbs down. I see some thumbs down.
Do you
I
need
see a
us
thumbs
to
down
hold
from-
them for a certain amount of time or anything, or
Just
I'm
long
not
enough
sure
for me
how
to be able
hard
to
it
look at
is to
everybody.
see it.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. I see thumbs down. Nate's thumbs down. Sonia, I saw your thumb down. All right. Yeah, chronic absenteeism, that is a myth. All right. So we've been learning about chronic absenteeism. This chart came off of DEW, Department of Education Workforce website. I feel like it does a nice job of summarizing the difference between chronic absenteeism, excessive absences, and then habitual truancy. All right, so good morning. If there's two of you in the room, make sure you both put your name in the chat, please, for attendance. Hi, welcome. So chronic absenteeism, remember, is 10% of the total hours a student misses of school, whether those hours are excused or unexcused. Okay, so it's just how much time is the student not in school getting academic instruction. Now, if it is a field trip or something for academic purposes, those do not count. I did get some clarification on that. So those do not count if it's a school-based field trip for academic purposes. But if it's a sporting event that is outside of school, so like my niece belongs to a gymnastics club and she's going to miss a Friday afternoon in order to go to a gymnastics meet, that would count, those hours would count toward chronic absenteeism if she was reaching that threshold. Okay. All right. So excessive absences are defined in law by 38 excused or unexcused hours absent, unless it is a medically excused absence. Okay, so if we have that doctor's note that says this kiddo has been sick, they haven't been able to come to school because of it, then that does not count toward excessive absences. All right, and we have a couple of cases in our office of some consultants who have had children miss school, a lot of school because of medical conditions. And then they get that nasty letter from a school district saying, you're in danger of going to court, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't make them happy when they've been communicating directly with the school about a medical situation their child has, and then adding the stress of that kind of letter coming home on top of it. So we want to be careful about that. When we're talking about the school year, okay, we're talking about 65 excused or unexcused hours absent unless it's medically excused. Okay, so the 38 is hours per month. The 65 is any accumulation of those hours in a school year. And then habitual truancy is 30 hours without a legitimate excuse for consecutive absences. So they're just not showing up to school and we don't have any kind of medical excuse for it. In the month, it's 42 hours without a legitimate excuse.
Amy, we have
And
a
then,
question.
yeah, Allison.
We have gotten different reports from different people about the medically. So we have been told that if it is just the parent saying that they medically excuse them, but then we have also heard that it has to be a doctor's note, a medically excused category. So what is your take on that? Because we've gotten both answers.
parents abusing what they believe to be.
There's,
My understanding is it needs to be medically excused. To be medically excused, you have to have a doctor's note. That is my understanding.
okay,
Because we need some verification that a professional has deemed it a medical condition.
was our take, but then somebody else was telling us that no, you could, if the parent was saying it. So two different
Where did-
reports.
Was it from DEW that they said that, or?
No, I don't recall.
Okay.
But yeah, we had two different reports. Yeah.
So to get
Clarify
an
What
absolute
your
final
understanding
answer,
was.
that's my understand, that's my interpretation of it. This
Okay.
chart came right off of DEW website. Patrick Hickman is, and during, I can look up his contact information. I have his email. He is in charge of attendance through DEW, so he would be a person to email if you
Okay,
need
he would be
a
the,
I have a
DEW
question.
final answer on that.
I have a
Okay.
question. What we do generally as our district, we actually have, so if a child is absent 1 or 2 days, you know, and parent sends a note and says that they were sick, they might have a, you know, just a 24-hour, 48-hour bug. We'll take an attendance, we'll take a note from the parents until up to 10 days throughout the entire school year. But after 3 days of absence, you need to have seen a doctor. And that's what we tell our parents. They need to have seen some kind of doctor and have some kind of documentation if they've been out 3 or more days due to absence.
I would agree. Yeah, if it's a short number of days, but if we start talking about habitual truancy or excessive absences, then yes, we need the medical note. And thank you, Nicole. Nicole put Patrick Hickman's email address in the chat for you. So, and if you find out something different, Allison, can you send me an email or something so that I'm not telling people the wrong thing? But it is my understanding to be a medically excused absence, you need to have a medical professional's signature on something.
I did just
Well,
look it up. Go ahead,
I'm sorry,
Margie.
I was just gonna say that I think that if you have excessive absences due to illness, if you don't take your kid to a doctor, at some point, doesn't that cross over into neglect if you're not looking after your kid? You know what I'm saying?
Potentially, yeah.
That's,
Nicole, you said you looked it up. Okay, Nicole's got the answer.
So that's what's
Definition.
posted on the DEW site under Ohio law for attendance terms and definitions. It looks like it might be at the discretion of the district. I still think it's worth asking Patrick, but that's how they're referencing it online.
Okay, so now I'm curious. So Allison, I'll email Patrick Hickman and figure that out. And I will send an email out to everybody.
okay. Well, and maybe that's where if they're leaving it up to the local district, like maybe that's where the confusion is coming from with two
It
different
is.
sides, then,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would make sense. Logically, I would think it needs a medical note, but you know, that doesn't always apply. All right, I'm just making myself a note so I don't forget. All right, good question. Thank you for asking, and I will work to get a concrete answer from him. And as soon as I do, I will send it out to all of you. Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? Good. All right, so our next myth or fact: districts cannot use suspension or expulsion as a consequence for low attendance. Is that true or false? Thank you, Anna. Martha, any thoughts? Ralph, I saw you. Dennis, what was your answer? Thank you. All right. And you are right. That is a fact. Okay. And that came out of House Bill 410. And again, if we apply logic to this, to suspend someone for not coming to school or expel someone for not coming to school That's what they didn't want to do anyway. You know, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So Ohio law states that students cannot be suspended or expelled for truancy issues. We want to be able to work with families proactively as much as possible to address barriers and figure out why they're not coming to school. Okay. All right. Thank you, Sonia. I saw you said true in the chat. Myth or fact? Parents must be immediately notified of the legal ramifications of excessive absences as soon as they occur. Is that a fact or a myth? Jacob, I see no. Allison, I see yes. Dennis, I see yes. Ryan, I see yes. Sonia, I see yes. All right, this one's a tricky one. This is actually a myth, okay?
Mm.
So I wasn't talking about truancy, because remember that's different. These are excessive absences. Parents do need to be notified, but we don't want to start that letter with the legal schmiegel right away, okay? So when a student reaches the threshold for excessive absences, that are not part of a medically excused absence, there's several steps according to the update on House Bill 410 that the district needs to take, okay? So yes, we do need to contact the family in writing within 7 days of that triggering absence, when they hit that threshold of the absences. So yes, they do need to be contacted in writing. However, it doesn't have to come up, you don't have to hit them with the legal information right away, okay? We want to make sure that this reach out, this communication is more positive and problem-solving approach and a more of a friendly orientation, because we don't want somebody just throwing it in the trash right away. It could still happen, I know, but we want to start with presuming some positive intent and reaching out to figure out what is going on. So I had shared this resource before during one of the other presentations, but it fit really well right here again. The Statewide Family Engagement Center has come up with, so I know that there is a sample letter that was put out by the department for people with excessive, or students with excessive absences. That one does not have the friendliest of language necessarily. So some modifications have been made, and the Statewide Family Engagement Center has tackled that, and they have templates online. And this is linked in the Padlet as well for attendance letters that are a little more family friendly, okay? And a little more of an invitation to work together to help get students to school. So that's a resource you can look up in all of your spare time. But, all right, one more, myth or fact. When students are habitually truant, they are not automatically referred to the court system. I've got some thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up, thanks, Nate. Thumbs up. All right, so yes, that is a fact. Okay, once they hit those thresholds for habitual truancy, it's not an automatic send a court letter. Okay, this is where the law lays out some steps that need to be taken in order to help meet the students' needs. So when they hit that habitually truant threshold, the law requires that the school or district creates an attendance intervention team or an absence intervention team and make 3 meaningful attempts to contact the family within 7 school days of the student hitting that threshold. Okay, so within 7 school days, you got to watch the language in this because it switches back and forth between calendar days and school days. All right, so 7 school days, we're going to convene a team. So that could be principal, it could be counselor, it could be the student's teacher or teachers, and convene that team or create that team, and then reach out to try to contact the parent at least 3 times within those 7 school days to ask the parent to come in to talk about absences. Okay. Then within 10 calendar days, the student will be assigned to the selected absence intervention team. And then once that has been made, within 14 school days, the school or district will develop the student's absence intervention plan. Okay, So within 2 or 14 school days, so almost 3 weeks after the student has been assigned an absence intervention team, then you have to create this absence intervention plan. And this is where all these great strategies that we've been working on, we start bringing those together. And, just because a student has reached this threshold doesn't preclude them from receiving tier 2 strategies. Because again, they all kind of blend together, right? But this is where it becomes more of a wraparound service possibility, depending
Tammy?
on what the situation is with the kiddo. Yes, Allison.
Question, we were just talking, I'm sure this documentation is somewhere, but I'm sure you know it right offhand.
Maybe.
The-
I've learned
the
a lot.
The academic intervention team. So we've been doing, obviously, Miss Wallace, a member of our admin, and then a general education teacher. Is there requirements for who needs to be a part of that team?
I did not see any in the reading that I was doing. Okay, it needs to be
Okay.
people that are involved with the student, obviously. And
Right.
best practice, you want to have an administrator there, possibly a social worker. If you have a social worker on staff, it's going to depend on the needs of the student.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I
we were
did not
clarifying.
see anywhere where it said exactly who had to be there.
Okay, that's what we wanted to check.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, so we create this plan. And then after the plan has been developed, the district has 7 calendar days to provide the plan to the family in writing. Okay, so in an ideal situation, the family is sitting there with us, helping to create the plan, agreeing to the plan, receiving a copy of the plan in writing. That doesn't always happen. And so within 7 calendar days, they need to receive the plan from you in writing. Okay, now this is where the complaint part comes in. A complaint is filed if we have 60 calendar days of the plan being in place and the plan being implemented with fidelity by the staff, but the student has not made progress on that plan, and progress is defined by the plan creators. Okay, so whatever stipulations have been put into that plan that the student needs to attend X% of the time, or whatever that is, if within 60 calendar days, the student has not met those goals or made that progress, that's when we start looking at a truancy complaint. I'll let you percolate on that for just a second. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right, and there's this lovely FAQ that we've become great friends in the last couple of weeks as I've been prepping. And that is linked in the Padlet with more information about House Bill 410 and just answering some of these questions. Okay. All right. So what does an absence intervention plan look like? Okay, this was a template that was part of Attendance Works and their information, and that is linked on the Padlet. And then Washington Local has also developed an attendance intervention plan. And Ryan Eldridge and this is also linked on the Padlet. We do have permission from Washington Local to share this with you. Thank you so much, Washington Local. I appreciate you. And so with no further ado, I will turn it over to Ryan to kind of talk through their attendance intervention plan. Ryan, do you need to share a screen or anything, or?
Yeah, I just sent a request to share.
Okay. All right, give me 1 second. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Eldridge. I am the district attendance specialist in Washington Local, as well as associate principal at one of our elementary schools at Monac Elementary. This is the first year in this position in Washington Local. Previously, I was a principal in Findlay, Findlay City Schools, and several other positions throughout my time. So happy to be here and happy to present and just try and help provide resources and learn from others as well.
You should be a
Okay.
co-host.
Okay, great. All right, just making sure everybody's able to see my screen here. So we do have a resource hub for attendance. So we have several different factors in here. I'm going to dive into the high school intervention plan here first. And so ours is really what we try to do is so this was something that was shared by my predecessor, but what it did is kind of just listed different types of interventions or supports that we are currently doing, and a way of documenting. So from that, the way I broke it down was more into a tiered approach. So the tier 1, 2, and 3. And so as you can see from the screen here, our first, let me see if I can make it a little bigger for you all. Hopefully everybody able to see that a little better. Hopefully. Okay. So
Probably hit it a couple more times, Ryan, if you can blow it up just a little more for those of us with older eyes.
try. All right, so our approach is just looking at those establishing relationships. As we know, one of the biggest factors to improving attendance is making sure that we have a great culture in the building, and those culture and building pieces start with relationships in the classroom. So as kids are out, we have some simple guidance, just like you know, a teacher sending, "Hey, we miss you. Hope to see you tomorrow." Those types of factors there, and using their preferred method of communication. If they don't get a two-way communication through that means, the next time they would reach out through a different means. So if I use Class Dojo in the elementary, and I don't get it, you know, thanks or anything like that, I'm going to try just a different approach the next time. So maybe a phone call, then the next time just connecting. But again, we really focus on the positive aspect of just saying and connecting that in. And so then through there, it continues down. We get into our steps where if it hits that monthly threshold, then obviously that attendance letter goes out as well, and continue those practices. Then through that means we have different hours that when they hit. So in the high school has an advisory period. And so those advisory teachers kind of try and hone in and in that group to cluster and really work with continuing to build that relationship. So almost a mentor-mentee type factor in that realm. If they get to 40 hours in a semester, we have them notify our associate principal that is the head of attendance in the high school end, Ms. Spain, as well as the counselor and that end to connect so that they can start to prepare and look into the tier 2 supports, as well as one of the things we moved up is we moved our improvement plan up. So I know we're talking about tier 3 today, but we thought really trying to identify barriers and supports not only is going to help in the truancy factor and the court factors and that, but also in the factor of chronic absenteeism. So we target no matter what here. As we scroll down, we try to get within 50 hours of that first semester or 75 hours in the school year, with the assumption of around 100 hours is gonna hit chronic absenteeism between 100 and 120, depending on the amount of school, just knowing that that's that 10% time. So they then build that team early, get that ready, make that connection, and then if they hit that time frame, we go into the improvement plan, as well as you see the yearly letter would be going out. If it's past we do 65 hours so that we just make sure that we're hitting, and as Tammy mentioned, trying to go on that positive end of just really connecting and making sure that we're doing the right things to lessen and reduce absenteeism across the board. They continue to monitor that for that 30 days and so forth and revisit if needed, going through supports. And then they start to connect with me in that step 3, tier 3 approach. We do different factors as well in there. I do go out and as well as our administrators and different things on positive home visits. If we haven't seen a kid in a few days, we go knock on the door and check on them to make sure they're all right. And we try to make it a positive experience, but also people don't like that a lot of times and they get their kids to school. So it works. In addition, if there is something that happened, then we're positively interacting and making sure to address that. There have been Child Protective Service calls that come from there. So we are trying to make sure the kids are safe as well. And then lastly, this has jumped into an extensive piece of where we have started to look at policies, revisit, and look at proactive approaches, because what we found is residency type factors have come into play as well. And I'm sure some of, especially with us being close to TPS and vice versa, and that there's a lot of jumping from one address to another that happens to be outside of that school. So it has given us a better understanding, because sometimes someone might even just be hiding an address, and that kid is struggling to get to school because they're struggling to get them there. So that helps on that end. We continue through, and then one thing that we did start to do this year in the high school is, whether or not you're aware, I was not aware of this until Mrs. Spain brought it to my attention, but when a kid is habitually absent from the state, there is a state form that you can complete to that suspends their license, or the opportunity to have a license, if they are not able to be responsible enough to attend in the high school realm. So we have started to do that in severe cases and make sure that they're aware of that before that happens, and that we're trying to make sure that we're not going on the punitive end, we're going on the positive end, but that is that piece. If need be, we have done it in cases. And so really, I know we're jumping more into the improvement plan, so I'm going to click over to our improvement plan and what that looks like. They do vary slightly from the elementary to the high school. However, depending on that relationship established and certain factors like building in, even possibly motivational factors, I'm going to use the elementary so that it has those pieces as well. So we do have who that team is. So typically there's an administrator from the school end. And then I have started with modeling them first, and then handing them, and then coming in, observing them if they would like me to, and then handing it off to the administrators to do it, because they're the ones that know the kids much better. They're the ones that have those relationships, and can help there. So then, as Tammy mentioned, really looking at who is needed. So getting an idea in that phone call when we connect, who's needed for the team. So if there's a lot of medical, we always try to make sure the school nurse is there. If there's some mental health specifics, then we make sure our counselor's there, and just trying to make sure we have the right supports and team there for that child, and addressing those barriers. We get into some of the specifics. So we do look at historical perspective of last year. Have they had one? Or previously, or is this an update to one from that year? And then go into certain factors to look at as well, such as the IEP and a graduation review, or graduation plan review, and so forth. We always like to mark exactly what it is, so we know what we're having a conversation about and where those factors are. And one of the things that I really like about this is looking at patterns and trends. A lot of times it may be sporadic, but sometimes what you're seeing is, and you probably have experienced this, where a kid is contagious and then they're out for the whole week when they could have been back that second day. And so just talking about those factors and connecting on certain approaches there. And another trend might be that they're saying that they are sick, but they're not getting those doctor's notes. And so we have those conversations and talk about that pattern in there, and then connect and put in the supports that they're accessing doctor's notes and so forth. So a lot of those types of factors go into that and that pattern. I mean, you've seen everything from every kid out every Friday to a kid being late over and over, and different factors on those ends, but addressing those patterns and just notifying what you're seeing and asking if there's barriers in that has been very helpful. I do like to mark, we do an early intervention strategies and what we've already done, and then offer this and review it and come back to it after talking about barriers to see if there's things that we might be able to provide in that realm for a student based on what those barriers are. So things that we're always typically marking is that we're making those positive calls. In the high school end, we always have an advisory period. So there's check-in, check-outs. There's usually then that mentor. And so kind of just ensuring with that child and the family member that they do feel that they're a mentor. And then we're able to check that. And then recognizing good improvement attendance and the PBIS piece is there. But also one of the nice things, and I'll say amazing things since I've jumped into the district, is Whitmer has a health clinic. And so really trying to highlight those types of factors and get some of those supports, because we know some of our families may not have access, quality access to healthcare, or are fearful that they're going to just take their kid and have to pay a lot of money out of pocket. And so even though we know that that can come into neglect, they also, those are real fears. And so we try to make sure that they're aware of the health clinic that isn't going to have that happen, but also provide all those services for them. Jumping past that, then we dive into, and this is that conversation with that kid, whether it's elementary. I have had conversations with kindergartners, and it has still been just fine. We've been able to identify these. I may be asking a lot of scaffolding questions, but I'm able to get these factors in, and that helps me if I want to build out a some kind of incentive plan, whether it's weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, or so forth. I don't ever go with daily, and you probably know why. Talk and let the family discuss. I always try to identify a strength that I see, whether it is just that, hey, they picked up the phone. And so I put communication in that, or having two-way communication. And then I always try to have the family also bring in any strengths they feel are in there to just highlight and attribute. And then we get into those barriers, the obstacles, and then we start to develop supports and solutions to those. As I mentioned, sometimes it may just be medical on, hey, and I try to come at it from a positive perspective, but we understand someone's sick. We also just want to make sure that they're okay and they're not missing out, because one of the things that we hear a lot, and you all probably hear a lot, is stress and anxiety. And so I always try to bring in and make it a positive idea of that, hey, one of the things that I never realized with my kid is he has a lot of anxiety, and then he is coming when he goes back to school, that builds that. So him missing less time, I've noticed there's not the stress and anxiety because he is attending and doesn't have to play catch up, just like when we come back in from work. And so just trying to connect those factors has been very helpful in building those solutions. So that is our process. Then what I have here is the signatures, obviously, and we note about a review date and review time. I always tell them that the review date is only if there is something where the improvement is not there. If they've shown full improvement, then we're going to just continue to monitor and celebrate the success and continue that. If they are showing a huge drop off, then that's when we may be going to court, and I have that conversation possibly before that 30 days, or bring that to their attention as we're getting to that 30-day point. Then I have school documents only just for us and for our additional notes. So this is those three contexts that Tammy was talking about. So obviously if we wouldn't be able to, I'd mark this, and then I'd still try and complete the plan, whether it is just with the child or through whatever means that we have or know that the parent has mentioned previously, if we've had some discussions or talks, but then that way we're able to still try and have that improvement plan and really still try to work. Obviously, additional notes and considerations. And then the last one here that is helpful is, I don't like to share this with the family because I don't want it to be a pick free for all, but I do think that when it comes applicable, and that I mentioned, I'm not the one that's always sitting in there, trying to give an idea of some of the things that are offered that we can offer helps them build those supports when we find out what it is. But again, I don't want to just put that out and say, hey, here's all these different ideas. What do you want? It's not a pick and choose. We do have a better understanding a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times we have a better understanding of what those supports and solutions are when we hear those barriers. So that is our plan. Any questions? Anything I wanted to open it up there?
We do have a question in the chat. What is the alternative schedule?
An alternative schedule. So for instance, I just sat in a meeting that actually did end up going to court, where there was some anxiety and mental health pieces to it. That kid in the high school mentioned and hadn't mentioned because they wouldn't answer the phone until we went into that mediation. But the perfect example would be he said his stresses are when he gets to school and the hallways are crowded. So that alternative one was we talked and sat with him, gave him an option to either come into school a little earlier than kids got there and have a place for him to be able to go, or come in later, just later after the halls were cleared. He chose to do the earlier. So he would come in, he would go to the associate principal's area and hang out in there and then be able to go to class right after, so that there was no huge time where there's tons of, hundreds of kids changing. And so then that continued where we looked at how do we do this? And so some of you may know of structured days. If you've heard of structured days very much are like if a kid just can't handle themselves in the hallway and bathroom, we have times where a kid either leaves class early and gets to that next class before the bell, or leaves a few minutes after and gets to class so that they're not in the hallways. We do the same thing for a kid that's having stress and anxiety going into those halls. So he would leave, after the second bell, that's when he would go to class and go to that next class and get there within the next 3 minutes. So he would have the 3-minute time lapse. So those are some of the examples in that alternative scheduling. We also do have some where maybe an online course or a hybrid course, depending on certain factors and different things along those. But those are all different factors in there, and you kind of get the idea, the snapshot of what that might look like.
Thank you. What other questions do you have? No other questions
Apologize
for
if
Ryan?
this has been covered because I got here a little bit late, but when I got in here, I noticed it said that you were starting like attendance plans first semester if they've missed 40 hours or 60 hours or something.
50, yeah.
Can that, I've always done it at the 72 unexcused hours because that's the House bill. Can you start it early in that count legally? Like, and then if they still accrue more unexcused, file sooner? Like, how does?
So, I mean, on my end, what we've looked at was specifically, we look at it, we go through. If there's a huge drop off, we try to again follow up earlier. But in those cases, we typically we haven't had to file near as many. And I'll say the ones we're filing are the kids that so far have been where it has been you can't even reach them until it's past the 72. It's they're hitting 100 hours where we're finally connecting with the family, or that because of a knock on the door or whatever it may be. But as far as we start it and it initiates at 50, that there's that communication end. We're going to be getting into the school year where we're going to be hitting 50. But again, if we're hitting 50 near the end of the first semester, those kids aren't typically being filed on anyway. So that's why we're trying to do it as a tier 2. As a tier 3, we have, I think there's been one case where I have filed that initial attendance plan or marked that initial attendance plan because we could not get any word from them. So it was better than, and I also noted the follow-up was the 3 attempts after to try and follow up and update that plan. So there has not been any issues with the courts for filing that way or anything as such on my end, but I'll let Tammy speak if there is anything legally that you're feeling like might be a question mark.
I wouldn't think that starting interventions earlier would be a problem. I mean, obviously we want to get kids back into school as soon as possible. So, I mean, the longer we wait, the harder it is, especially when we have anxiety as a contributing factor. I mean, the longer they're out, the longer they're out. Nate, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of things that I have done. I try to do it real early. Like we send our first letter after 20 hours of excused or unexcused, because then it's just noticed out there. We just let everybody know we're tracking everything. So far, I've already sent 150 letters this school year just because we have a lot of kids with 20 absences, regardless of what their excuse is, and we just put it in. So then that means I got my first attempt done. And then I think our next step is our second letter goes out at 40 unexcused hours. So that's just unexcused hours. You had no reason. You never called the secretary's office. You never did any of that stuff. So then now I got the second letter and I'm trying to get ahead of it because, if they're getting to 72 and we haven't even done an attendance improvement plan by the time they're 72, well, they're already truant. So I try to hit it like, let's do the plan at like 55 hours. And yes, there are times these kids hit it so fast that you start to send your first letter and then all of a sudden you're already at 50 hours. You're like, so I really going to send a second letter after 3 days? Like I want to give them some time to kind of think about it and kind of go through it. The unfortunate aspect with the letters we find is, if I send out 100 letters throughout a year, I might get 2 parents to call back because they actually read it. And that's the unfortunate aspect. So the letters, I just try to get it done because the real the communication is when you actually call them. And that's when you start doing the improvement plan. And we try to get the improvement plan done at like 55 unexcused hours to try to get ahead of it before 72. But of course, I have students right now that have already hit the 72 because I just can't keep up with them, if they miss so much time and all that. So.
Thank you, Nate. Ralph, you have a question?
Yeah, questions for Ryan. A couple of questions, Ryan. I might have missed this because I did have to step out a moment, but do you do this at the building level?
Yeah, so what we had is just because, and I think I mentioned, I'm not only the district attendance specialist, but also an associate principal, which will explain my attire because it's Spirit Week. But associate principal at an elementary at Monac. So we have established where our assistant principals are leading those meetings at the elementary level. I do come in and support our middle school a little bit more because even though they have an assistant principal, there's a little bit more discipline in some of those types of factors. But they've gotten pretty accustomed to being able to do it and built out a system, and they're doing it at the building as well. And at the high school, we have that associate principal that is in charge of the attendance, and so she's working really hard and diligently to work with that and do it with and connecting with the advisors in that end. So yes, correct.
Yeah, next question, Ryan. Tell me a little bit about the process. I've experienced many buildings or districts that have attendance issues, and the recording and the keeping track in that process often becomes so burdensome, overwhelming. So how many kids are there in your building? And tell us about, is this process that you have, do you feel like it's working, or you feel like you've got the weight of the world because you've got to fill all this stuff out? Real life stuff. That's what I'm looking for, Ryan.
Yeah, so I think I do believe it's working. I do believe there's still room for improvement. As I noted, I think this is my first year in the position. And my predecessor had kind of created something similar. So that intervention sheet is where it's already giving some of the documentation. And what we've expressed is if you didn't get one, you didn't get one. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing in the state that says you're supposed to be addressing and doing the intervening. So if there's not one on there, we don't mark it, but then that's something that we know we need to work with and do. As far as I have not heard from, okay, so you mentioned about how many kids. So my building has close to 500, and that's pretty much the average in the elementary school. We do have 2 elementaries that have around 700 kids, and they also have a little bit more support there. So it hasn't been an issue. One of those 2 elementaries is doing an amazing job with it and has this system that is where I try to utilize and model and show others that if they need. Junior high, that has been where it's a little trickier, but then going and meeting with them and providing support and trying to find out what those barriers are just with the building has been extremely beneficial. So they have a little bit different support at the one junior high, and then at the other junior high, they've kind of started to take from there and then also utilize me a little bit more. And it hasn't become burdensome there either. The high school, with Cassandra, she is a rock star, and so I still can't figure out how she's able to do what she does, because she's tackling attendance and discipline at the high school. There's roughly 2,500 there. That's where our biggest number of attendance plans and all those are coming in, and they're tackling. But she set up systems, and those advisory periods with those laid out, and the tracking that goes into that, it has been very helpful. And so we did create what's called an attendance looker. So working with, I can't show you it because it's got all the kids on it, but what I can give you is kind of a snapshot. And what it is it pulls from PowerSchool. So our LMS system, it pulls from there, and then each week on Thursday night it pulls, and then on Friday morning we get an updated, I would say an updated list of everybody and where their attendance is at. So that has been extremely helpful in setting up systems, and that means so secretaries are expected to on Friday morning take a look at those attendance and see if there's any letters that need to go out. Then they've been given the process of how to do that, and make sure that that's taken care of so it's not burdensome there, and they get those letters out. So we started to develop all those systems and lessen that and find out. I think the importance, what I'd say is listening to and getting the feedback, but also going from a solution-oriented approach. And that's what we've done. So I think that's where we've had a lot of success. But that would be my recommendation as you go to build and look at those systems.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? All right, Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you
thank you.
taking the time to share. And I hate to say I'm grateful that your meeting got canceled, but kind of am. Just so that you didn't feel as rushed, because I think everybody found a lot of value in what you presented today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. You'll probably see in a few days the reason the meeting was canceled, and it's a really great thing. So that's all I can say there. But
All righty. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I am going to share my screen again. As I mentioned, there is a FAQ available on DEW's website all about these laws in Ohio. And I found them very helpful as far as I read the law, and then I read through the FAQ, and then I read the law again, and it's like, okay, I think we've got it here. So that is a great resource, again, linked on the Padlet so that it is available to you. All right, so one of the things I wanted to talk about today was the early warning system data dashboard in ODEX. And lo and behold, I am unable to access that. So that is coming soon. That is our first, in January, that is our first presentation in our next part of this series by Amy Szymanski, who works for DEW, and she also works out of our office. She is the guru in all things the EWIMS system and early warning system data. So we have her scheduled to come in. SSTs do not have access to that dashboard unless it is given to us by a district. So, and I didn't want to get into any district's information to do that. So coming attractions, give you incentive to come back in January. There it is, coming soon. All right, so tier 3 interventions. We're talking about the top part of our triangle as far as individual student interventions. We talked session 1 about foundational supports, having a good welcoming climate in your building. Tier 1, universal preventions, making sure that you have, school-wide attendance challenges sometimes in order to encourage kids to come to school, that kind of thing. Tier 2, early intervention strategies, Tier 2 strategies, looking at what do the kids need, what are the kids' needs, what do the kids need, check-in and check-out, a mentoring program, things such as that. The recordings from those sessions are available on the Padlet, but now we are moving into tier 3. So these are students who are attending school 80% of the time or less. All right, so they have missed a lot of school. All right, so 20% or more of the school year they have missed. And this is case management a lot of the times. We may have to have multiple challenges addressed with help from health, housing, and social service agencies. So how do we keep all of these people coordinated and moving forward to do what's best for the student? Okay, some of the challenges that can help create chronic absenteeism and then up into excessive absences and truancy are homelessness, teen pregnancy, mental illness, and foster care. All right, so any of those situations increase the likelihood that a student isn't able to get to school on a regular basis. So we're looking at, again, coordinating services between schools and outside agencies. When you do this, one of the cautions is you need to be careful that you have permissions to share information across agencies so that you're not in violation of FERPA laws. So just be careful with that. Make sure that you have all the correct paperwork filled out to share information across the different agency boundaries so that you don't get into trouble there. All right, so there are several different models available that were referenced in the attendance intervention guide from Attendance Works. And one of them is called Communities in Schools, CIS. Again, all the websites are linked on the Padlet. So this is a model that was deemed evidence-based by Attendance Works for encouraging interagency collaboration. There's a site coordinator that is placed at the school, and that site coordinator helps the school to partner with businesses, agencies, healthcare providers, and volunteers to help keep kids in schools. All right, so just all of these are just a quick blurb about what they're about with the website in case you want to dig into it further. Foster Ed is an organization that is currently operating in Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Indiana, and they assign an education champion for each student that is in foster care. And they use a trauma-informed approach because you don't get to foster care without some trauma happening. It just kind of happen. I mean, that's the way it works. And so it encourages students to set their own goals for improvement, which I thought was interesting. We know from Hattie that students setting their own goals and trying to meet those goals is an evidence-based strategy. So how could we incorporate that idea in when we are working with kiddos who are chronically absent? Now, we also need to keep in mind that the goals need to be reasonable and within the student's locus of control. So as a school, what transportation issues can we help solve? You know, Ryan, I love the alarm clock, you know, the old-fashioned alarm clock where, sorry, you just got the old-fashioned alarm clock where you need to set across the room, plugged into the wall so that you're not just turning it off. As soon as it rings, you have to actually get up in order to turn that thing off. But how can we help each student set some goals and find the purpose of coming to school, find the meaning in coming to school. Impact Tulsa is another organization. This one is a more systemic organization. I was poking around on their website. They focus on data to help make systemic change. So this one doesn't go kid by kid, but takes the information that is available, the data that is available in Tulsa schools and through interagency collaboration, and try to figure out like the root cause of some of these issues that create chronic absenteeism. And then how, as a system, as a city of Tulsa, do we address these issues? Okay, so some of the things that they do, they have some youth initiatives, so workshops and strategic partnerships with businesses and such. They do professional development. They have collaborative action networks for community partners to help solve some of those problems. Like if we all get together and, okay, so we have these resources, how can we pool them and use them in order to help students get to school. And then a part of their work is also My Brother's Keeper, which helps to address opportunity gaps for men of color, men and boys of color. So because we know that that tends to be a higher risk population, so they are specifically focused on boys and young men of color to help. So that is their website there. And then children's cabinets. These are available in some states. These are interagency partnerships on the government level. And so instead of Health and Human Services and Education and this agency all working separately, they come together to help work together to make sure that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction when it comes to policies and expectations. So that, for example, they have representatives from Education, Health, Human Services, and Juvenile Justice, all on those kind of committees and cabinets. And then Interagents, National Center for Youth Law's Compassionate Systems Framework. This is available in Ohio's attendance playbook. It is mentioned in there. It's a research-based model for interagency collaboration. I thought it might be interesting to kind of look at and see how they run things to help support students in foster care and involved in the juvenile justice system or experiencing homelessness. So it's kind of a framework for that interagency collaboration. All right, does anyone have any experience with any of these agencies or questions? I mean, I was looking on websites. That would require a deep dive, and an hour and a half presentation isn't quite long enough to do that. But any questions or any experiences you have with working with interagency collaboration that you want to share with the group? Allison, if you're talking to us, you're muted.
No, I was looking at a couple of them about like, are like cost wise, are they granted? Like, what's that? You know, because like you don't want to take resources away from other places, you know. So I was just looking at the case management, the CIS kids to try to see that. So I was talking to Walls when she came back in from an attendance meeting. So
from an attendance meeting. Very timely.
So
okay, I just wanted to make sure if you were trying to communicate with us.
No, I was just filling her in about that, and I was like, I can't see. I looked a little bit, but I couldn't see about like if it could be granted or a cost or anything.
Yeah, I would take a little deeper dive into that. All right, anyone else, or are we good? All right. So the other population, the subgroup that has a huge issue with chronic absenteeism are students who are homeless, okay, or have unstable housing. It does lead to a higher rate of chronic absenteeism, which again, makes sense. In 2020, 2021, 42% of homeless students were chronically absent. If you don't know where you're going to sleep at night, it does make it a lot harder to get to school, okay? The number of homeless students in Ohio is not going down, it is rising. McKinney-Vento is the primary legislation to help address this. And so each school is asked to have a homeless education liaison to help coordinate supports for students who lack a fixed regular nighttime residence, is how they're defining homelessness. So this includes students who are in shelters, doubling up with another family, living in a hotel or on a campsite. And so most of those make sense to me. I hadn't really thought as much about doubling up with another family. Basically, they're couch surfing, moving from place to place, staying with another family until they can have permanent housing of their own. Okay. The law is intended to help remove barriers for students who are homeless, helping them to get to school. And there are sub-grants available through McKinney-Vento, and then also Title I funding that can help support McKinney-Vento work. Some of the things this law did is it helped to eliminate some of the paperwork to prove residency for homeless students so that they can still continue to attend the school where they have started. And then schools are allowed to make decisions about the best placement for a student. So if we have a student who's moving across district lines to go sleep on grandma's couch now, the law asks that you think about what's in best interest of the student so that they can continue to attend school and have their education. If someone's moving in and out of districts multiple times or in and out of, like at Washington Local, in and out of different elementary school areas, what can we do to help provide continuity of education to those students so that they aren't switching schools every time they have to switch couches? And then also McKinney-Vento also asks that you help to provide and arrange transportation for students who are homeless so that that is a possibility to get to school. There's the suggestions to support students who are homeless, and these are things that we've talked about in some of the earlier sessions. We may have to address some of those basic needs, mental health and physical health concerns. So that's why I'm super excited about Whitmer having the health clinic there, because they do have mental health consultants as well. I believe I mentioned in an earlier session, I had asked, how is that funded? And it's all federally funded grants. It's not something that Washington Local is responsible for. And they also bill through insurance and Medicaid when that is available. Correct, Ryan? Make sure I'm not speaking out of turn.
Correct.
Thank you. Providing transportation to make it easier to get to school, create that welcoming school climate. And then, mental and physical health, but then also clothing and hygiene and school supplies. Because again, that may not make the cut when you do not have someplace to live. And then keeping track of data for those students, because but by virtue of being homeless, they are immediately at a higher risk for chronic absenteeism. Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Good. All right. So, for this last little bit, my thought is, remember, I've asked everybody, and I have gotten some action plans from people. Thank you. But an attendance action plan was one of the goals of holding these sessions. And so I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. I think I have everybody in breakout rooms because I know there's a couple people from Port Clinton. The Horizon Science schools are both here. And then Jacob and Anna, you're both high school, so I put you guys together. So I tried to put you in a breakout room that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense when you get there, come on back out and let me know, and we can rearrange a little bit. But the goal during this breakout room session, which tier 2, because usually we do a breakout room at the beginning and at the end, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time for Ryan to speak. So which tier 2 strategies from last time, and then tier 3 strategies do you already have in place? What are any of those that could be added to your action plan? And then how are you going to share that action plan with the rest of the district? And then what data and how are you, and when are you going to analyze data to see how your plan is working so that we can make changes and tweaks to it as we go along? Okay, so I'm gonna put you in breakout rooms. There's 2 to 4 people in each room. SST, I have you guys separated into different rooms, and I will go in room 3 with Maritime and Anna. Okay. Any questions about the directions? I will also put the questions in the chat. All right. Stop my sharing. Questions? All right, so we'll do about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes in the breakout room. and then come back for information on the next series and evaluations. Okay. Cool. Our next in attendance series, what we did is we sent out a survey, and you may have been one of the recipients, to schools that had engagement, graduation, or attendance, either family engagement or student engagement, graduation or attendance as some of their one plan goals. And we surveyed them as far as what topics they would like to see presented. And so I know originally I had said I was going to do a whole series on family engagement. There will be one session on family engagement and attendance. But these are the dates, and I put them in the chat too. So we will send out registration information as soon as we have it available. You'll get a direct email for it. But January 29th, as I mentioned, Amy Szymanski will be presenting on how to use the new early warning system data collection tool through ODEX. And that has a lot of really cool stuff in it as far as identifying students who are at risk, and attendance is one of the factors that is looked at. It's the ABCs, attendance, behavior as far as suspensions and expulsions are concerned, and then course performance, grades, and failing classes at the end of each semester. So she will be here on January 29th. February 3rd, another option that came up were instructional strategies to increase student engagement. And Chelsea Bodnarek and Nick Jacobs will be presenting on that, just having more engaging instruction and different strategies to do so, so that kids are excited about coming to school. On March the 4th, I will be doing a family engagement presentation. And then April 29th, we're going to be talking about rethinking the high school experience to increase graduation rates. And we know that in order to increase graduation rates, we have to have students in class to do so. And so that will be presented by Lisa Height, who is our college and career ready consultant. So we're pulling from all over the SST here in order to make these presentations happen and make sure you have the most qualified person available to talk about each topic. We are going to offer them virtually, and this one will be 2 different times during the day, unless we don't get any registration for the afternoon or the morning. So the same presentation will be offered twice during the day, once from 8:15 to 10:15, and then a second time from 1 to 3. And so that way we're hoping to be able to catch everybody, whether it's morning or afternoon that works best for you. They will also be recorded and added to the same Padlet, so you have everything all in one space. Okay. Questions about that?
Will we get emails for this? Are we already kind of signed up for this? Because I only had the dates up through today's in my calendar for this course.
Correct.
Are we automatically in this for those 4 dates as well?
You will get an email inviting you to register for the next 4 days.
Okay,
So
good.
you'll still need to register, please.
Okay,
But we will send you an email directly since you had signed up for this one.
okay, perfect. I just hadn't seen anything yet, and I do want to attend that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it hasn't come out yet. It's hot off the presses. As of last week, we got it organized. So we're working on filling out paperwork on our end, and then we will get out some advertising and registration link to all of you. And then the people also that had those items on their one plans.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. 11 o'clock, if you could take just a couple minutes to fill out our handy dandy survey, I really appreciate it. Give us some feedback. If you have some specific questions about any of those topics that we're presenting in the second semester, if you want to put those in the comments, that would be great. So that we can make sure to try to address each of those. And I thank you so much for giving me part of your morning today. Appreciate it, and have a wonderful holiday break. Enjoy.